Would you recognize a life-changing moment while it was happening? Stay until the end. This story will make you question how small moments can change everything. The hum of the neon sign outside Luna's diner crackled in the silence of the early morning, flickering like a heartbeat against the darkness. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of burnt coffee and something heavier, the weight of unspoken dreams. Milo Torres wiped down the counter for the third time in the last 10 minutes, his fingers tracing invisible patterns on the worn surface. 2:17 a.m., the dead hour. The kind of time where the world felt paused, where nothing ever happened. Or so he thought. He used to believe he was meant for more. Music had been his escape, his lifeline. But life had other plans. Now, at 26, the closest he got to a stage was the low hum of a radio playing old R&B classics in the diner's kitchen. Dreams don't pay the bills. And hope, that was a luxury he could no longer afford. The door chimed, breaking the quiet. At first, Milo didn't even glance up. Another restless soul looking for a cheap meal and a place to kill time. He had seen 1,000 of them. But this was different. The air shifted, tensed. A woman stepped inside, wrapped in an oversized hoodie, her face half hidden behind dark shades. She moved like someone who had spent years being watched yet mastered the art of being unseen. She slid into the booth by the window, her presence effortlessly commanding, yet without a single word spoken. There was something about her, something unshakable. Milo grabbed his notepad, his fingers suddenly less steady. He approached the table, swallowing back, the feeling creeping up his spine. "What can I get you?" he asked, his voice coming out rougher than he intended. She pulled down her hood just enough for him to see the curve of her lips as she smiled. "Just a tea. Chamomile, if you have it." Simple order, simple moment. And yet, nothing about this night would be simple. What would you do if a stranger changed your life in an instant? Milo set the teapot on the burner, the low hiss of heating water filling the silence. His hands were steady, but his thoughts weren't. There was something about her presence, not loud, not demanding, but impossible to ignore. He stole a glance at her from behind the counter. She sat effortlessly poised, like someone who belonged anywhere she chose to be. Not fidgeting with her phone like most late-night customers, not looking around, waiting. Just existing, fully present. That alone made her stand out. As the tea steeped, Milo wiped his hands on a rag, clearing his throat before approaching her booth. "Here you go. Fresh chamomile." She looked up, sliding her sunglasses to the bridge of her nose just enough for their eyes to meet. Her gaze was warm, yet piercing, like she could see straight through him. "Thank you," she said, her voice smooth, effortless. She cupped the mug, letting the heat seep into her fingers before taking the slow sip. Milo hesitated. Normally, he'd just nod and walk away. But the silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was expectant, like she was waiting for him to say something. "Long night?" he asked, the words escaping before he could stop them. She gave a small chuckle, setting her mug down. "You could say that." Her answer held layers, but she didn't elaborate. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, studying him. "What about you? Been here long?" Milo exhaled through his nose, half a laugh, half a sigh. "Too long. You don't sound like you love it." "It pays the bills." A practiced answer, a safe answer, one that didn't invite conversation. But she didn't let it slide. "That's not what I asked." For the first time in a long time, someone was actually listening. Not just hearing him, but really listening. Something inside him shifted, uncomfortable yet undeniable. He ran a hand over the back of his neck. "I guess I thought I'd be doing something else by now." She leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on the table. "Like what?" The words caught in his throat. He hadn't said it out loud in so long. It almost felt foreign. "Music," I used to write songs. Her lips curved into a knowing smile. Used to. Milo shrugged, suddenly aware of how small his dream felt now. Life gets in the way. She let the words hang there, untouched, before finally saying, "Or maybe you let it." The statement hit harder than it should have, like a quiet truth he'd been avoiding for years. He opened his mouth to respond, to defend himself, but before he could, she reached into her hoodie pocket and pulled out a pen. He watched as she grabbed a napkin, the soft scratch of ink filling the space between them. Then, without a word, she slid it across the table. Milo hesitated before picking it up. 3 words, written in smooth, confident strokes. "Start again. Tonight." His stomach tightened. He swallowed, glancing up at her, but she was already adjusting her hoodie, preparing to leave. "Wait," the word slipped out, but he didn't know what else to say. Didn't know how to hold on to a moment that already felt bigger than him. She just smiled, pushing her sunglasses back up. "You don't need permission. Just do it." And with that, she slid out of the booth, heading for the door. Milo sat frozen, fingers gripping the napkin like it was a lifeline. The bell above the entrance chimed softly as she disappeared into the night. Have you ever had a stranger say something that changed the way you saw yourself? Tell us in the comments. Milo sat motionless, staring at the napkin in his hands. "Start again. Tonight." The ink felt fresh, like it had just settled into the fibers, yet the weight of those 3 words pressed against his chest, as if they had been waiting there for years. His mind raced. What did she mean, start again? Did she know? Was this some cosmic coincidence, or had she somehow seen the truth beneath the surface? The part of him that still woke up with lyrics playing in his head, the part that still hummed melodies under his breath while scrubbing tables, the part that never really let go. The napkin crinkled under his grip as his heart pounded. He glanced toward the door as if expecting her to walk back in, to explain, to give him some kind of sign that this wasn't just some passing remark, but she was gone. And now, the moment was his alone to hold. He exhaled sharply, shoving the napkin into his pocket, as if hiding it could silence the voice in his head telling him to listen. A few minutes later, the diner door swung open again, but this time, it wasn't her. It was a group of college kids, their voices loud and careless as they slid into a booth. Business as usual. The spell had been broken. Milo forced himself back into routine, clearing dishes, refilling coffee, pretending like nothing had happened. But he could feel it. That shift. Like someone had nudged open a door inside of him that had been locked for too long. Later, as he stood behind the counter, wiping down the same spot over and over again, his phone vibrated in his pocket. He pulled it out, barely glancing at the screen. Probably just another late payment reminder. Until he saw the notification. Anonymous tweet. Rihanna just told some guy in a diner to chase his dreams. Damn. Wish that was me. Milo's breath caught. His fingers tightened around the phone as he swiped up, his pulse quickening. Another post. Only Rihanna would drop wisdom at 2 a.m. over chamomile tea. Some dude looked like his whole life changed. His stomach flipped. No, this wasn't happening. He hadn't even processed the moment himself, and now it was online. His heart pounded as he scrolled further. A blurry photo of him, standing at her table, napkin in hand. The caption read, "When Rihanna tells you to stop making excuses, you listen." The tweet had already racked up thousands of likes. Comments poured in, dissecting the moment as if the internet had been there in the booth, sipping tea with them. Damn, imagine getting life advice from Rihanna. I'd never recover. What did she tell him? I need to know. This guy better be writing an album right now. Milo felt like the air had been knocked out of him. This was supposed to be his moment. A quiet, personal shift, something he barely understood himself. And now, it was content. His hands clenched into fists. He had spent years feeling invisible, and now, overnight, he had become a viral story. Not because of his talent, not because of his work, but because someone famous had noticed him. The phone buzzed again. More notifications, more strangers turning his life into a spectacle. He suddenly felt exposed, like his dreams, his failures, were on display for the world to judge. What was he supposed to do now? Would the words mean more to you than the fame? How would you react? Milo's fingers hovered over his phone screen, scrolling through the endless flood of notifications. His life was no longer his own. The tweet had spread like wildfire. Every second, new comments rolled in, dissecting the moment, twisting it into something bigger than it was. News outlets had already picked it up. Headlines screamed. Rihanna's midnight pep talk sparks internet frenzy. Rihanna's life-changing advice to a struggling musician. Will he listen? They didn't even know his name. To them, he was just the guy who got lucky. The guy who happened to be in the right place at the right time. Milo felt sick. His phone buzzed again. This time, an unknown number. He let it go to voicemail, but seconds later, another call. Then another. He yanked the power button, shutting the whole thing off. The silence that followed was deafening. Leaning against the counter, he stared blankly at the diner floor. He had dreamed of being noticed, of making an impact with his music. But not like this. The bell above the door jingled, snapping him back. 2 customers walked in, whispering, sneaking glances at him like he was some kind of exhibit. They recognized him. He turned away, gripping the edge of the counter to ground himself. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. He had spent years being overlooked, unseen. Now, all at once, he was too seen. The diner's manager, Pete, ambled over, chuckling as he clapped a hand on Milo's shoulder. "Kid, you should be thanking me for keeping you on shift. You know how much business you're bringing in. People keep coming in just hoping to see you. Hell, you might need an agent soon." Milo forced a tight smile and shrugged off Pete's hand. "Yeah, I don't know about all that. You're trending worldwide. Man, don't waste it." Waste it. That's what everyone seemed to think. That this was an opportunity, not a disaster. That this was his moment to capitalize on. But was it even real? None of these people knew him. None of them had heard his music, cared about his struggle, his late nights, his doubts. They only cared because Rihanna had spoken to him. His stomach twisted. If she hadn't, he'd still be invisible. The thought burned, anger creeping into his chest. What did that say about him? About the world? His eyes flickered to the napkin, still tucked into his pocket. Start again. Tonight. He pulled it out, smoothing the creases with his thumb. Did she really mean it? The bell jingled again. More eyes on him. More whispers. Milo exhaled sharply, shaking his head as he stuffed the napkin back into his pocket. If he wanted this to be real, really real, he had to stop letting the internet define what it meant. He had a choice. He could play into the noise, let the media spin his moment into something hollow, or he could actually do something. The question wasn't whether Rihanna's words had power. It was whether he had the guts to make them mean something. Do viral moments help or hurt people? Let's talk about it. Milo sat on the edge of his bed, his old acoustic guitar resting across his lap. The napkin lay beside him, the inked words staring back at him like a challenge. Start again. Tonight. He ran his fingers over the strings, the vibration humming beneath his skin. It had been months, years, really, since he played without overthinking, without wondering if it was a waste of time. But now, the weight of the moment pressed against his ribs. His name. No, not his name. His moment was still everywhere. People online demanded an update, asking if he had written a song, if he had listened to Rihanna's advice. Everyone wanted to shape the story, turn it into something that fit their version of inspiration. But that wasn't how this worked. This wasn't about them. A sharp knock on his door jolted him from his thoughts. His roommate, Trey, poked his head in, phone in hand. "Dude, you seeing this?" Milo sighed, rubbing his face. "What now?" Trey flipped his phone around, showing a new post that was climbing in engagement fast. Rihanna had tweeted, "I said what I said. Let's see what he does." Milo's pulse slammed against his ears. The entire world was waiting, expecting. He could feel himself spiraling, the pressure curling around his chest like a vice. He wasn't ready for this. He hadn't written anything in so long. What if it sucked? What if people laughed? What if he failed, publicly, in front of millions? Or worse, what if he didn't try at all? Milo swallowed hard and turned back to the guitar. His fingers hovered over the strings, hesitant. Then, slowly, he played a chord. Then another, and another. The sound was rough, the notes uncertain, but they were his. Trey leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "You could ride the wave, man. Get a label's attention. Get signed." "Not like this," Milo interrupted, shaking his head. "Not because of a viral tweet. If I do this, it has to be real." Trey studied him for a second, then nodded. "Then make it real." The words settled deep. Milo exhaled, grabbed his phone, and opened the recording app. No overthinking. No second guessing. Just starting again. He pressed record and began to play, letting the words come naturally, unfiltered. He didn't know if it would be perfect, if anyone would care, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that he was doing it. When he finished, he stared at the screen for a long moment. One decision. That's all it took. He uploaded the clip, not to ride the trend, not to prove anything to anyone, but because this was his voice, his story. Within minutes, the comments started rolling in. "Damn, this is actually good. This is what she meant." He really started again. New favorite artist unlocked. Milo set his phone down, a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding finally releasing from his chest. The world could say whatever it wanted. For the first time in years, he knew who he was. Who can you lift up today? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories.